And welcome to Sports Hour with Chris and Christian. What a show we have for you here tonight. We're doing a winter sports special. We've got NBA and NHL on tap. We're going to start right into the NBA stuff, Christian. We can tell what the Warriors are doing. They're doing their thing out in the West, out in Oakland. They've already clinched a playoff spot. There are still 24 games to go. That is absolutely ridiculous. And somehow the Spurs are still 3.5 back. Any comments about the Warriors right now?
I think we're watching the best team of all time, and that goes without even knowing who the Bulls were when they had Jordan. I mean, we weren't around for that, but it's nice to see because our parents have always told us about how great the Bulls were and how great that Jordan was and that whole team was, and it's like kind of cool to see like it's almost a repeat of history, seeing it happen again. Just Steph Curry, the stuff he's doing is just. I don't think anyone's ever even people of that time haven't seen anyone shoot the way he does and make the plays he does. That play at the end of overtime the other night was
ridiculous.
You're going to see that probably for the next year and a half until he does something else crazy next game. But it's just impressive to watch, and I got to be honest, I don't see anyone beating them this year. I mean, I love the Spurs. I think it's probably Tim Duncan's last shot. I'd like to see him get a shot at it again. And I think that's probably going to be the series right before the championship. I think that's going to be the semifinals. It's going to be between them and Golden State. But as of right now, I love watching Golden State. So
I'd have to agree with you, man. Just seeing what Curry is doing, and all these comments about the old guys saying that Curry wouldn't succeed back in the days NBA. Well, they need to realize that it's not the back in the day NBA anymore. Mm-hmm. It's today's NBA. Everybody wants to shoot threes. You go down to a park, everybody's shooting threes. Nobody wants to shoot a layup. Nobody wants to shoot a pull-up jump shot. Everybody wants to make a three-pointer. Why? It's worth more. Mm-hmm. So I don't blame him. Curry is on pace for 410 threes. He already has his own record of 288 right now. He's on pace to make another 122 threes in the next 20-something games.
Is he averaging like 7 threes a game or something?
He is averaging at least 5 threes a game.
Jeez.
And he's got several games of 10-plus threes, which is disgusting because averaging 15 points a game, which is 5 threes, is a great season for a lot of players. Mm-hmm. Now at 53-5, is it possible they're going to do it?
I mean, when you were talking before this, we were talking about what they would have to do, and I believe you said they would have to go 20-4.
Yep.
And I mean, I don't see them slowing down any bit. And if they lost 4 games in their next 24, then you might have a say, okay, this might not be good going into the playoffs like that. But I mean, if any other team finishes 20-4, it's a strong finish. But with a team that's been doing so well and has only lost 5 games in almost their first 60, it's like, is it that much of a downgrade if they do lose more than 4 games or 4 or 5 games down the stretch? And who's to say they don't start resting people if they're ahead of the game? Do they really care much about the record? That's one thing. I think Draymond Green had a little scuff with Steve Kerr. It's not going to be that much big of a deal with the way the team is already. I mean, the way he plays, I'm sure it was just something small and something like that you can get over. But yeah, it's incredible to watch the way they're playing and to see just the completeness of the entire team. I mean, you go down that roster, their bench is better than some NBA teams in my opinion.
Absolutely.
It's ridiculous, and like I said before, I don't see anyone coming close. San Antonio might have a shot at them later in the season, but it's fun to watch, though.
I think it was crazy earlier in the season, and I know the Bulls have faded the last little while, but when they beat the Bulls and Cavs in consecutive, games by 30, and then they come out and they beat the Spurs 120-90, I think that was an absolutely huge statement. Now, the one thing you have to give the Spurs, they were without Tim Duncan. But if you ask me, I don't think Tim Duncan's presence makes up 30 points against the Golden State Warriors.
No.
And back to what you were saying, if they finish the season 20-4, they're on a slide going into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I think that's hilarious. Out in the East, I shouldn't say out in the East, we're in New York, but the Cleveland Cavaliers, they've got a 2.5-game lead on Toronto. The Boston Celtics just came out of nowhere, and they're the 3rd seed right now. They've they don't necessarily have the third seed locked up, but they're the top seed behind Cleveland and Toronto right now. You've got the 3 through the 9 seeds all within 4.5 games, with about 20, 25 games left to go. In the East, can the Raptors or anybody else take over the one spot from Cleveland?
Well, it's tough to say. I mean, Cleveland's doing their little struggle type of deal. I mean, last year, weren't they struggling at the beginning of the year?
Yeah.
I mean, their record was nothing to show for what they ended up doing. I would have to say that, I mean, it's anybody's shot there between, I would say, maybe the Raptors and the Cavs. I think the Cavs will end up, by the season's end, they should have it together and should be pulling in strong to the playoffs. If they don't, look out for one of these teams in the playoffs maybe to take them down.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it's going to say, okay, they're not. Cavs will probably go in as a 1 seed, in my opinion. But if one of these guys in the playoffs meets up with them, I mean, considering how closely knit this group of teams are, it's like you can pretty much almost pick any one of them that can probably go up against the Cavs in the playoffs. It's a 7-game series. I mean, you're going to see so many 7-game series in that conference.
Oh, absolutely.
Because everyone's so closely knit packed. I think the Cavs are going to have a tough time in that conference just because the way they're dealing with their coaching problem right now, and the stuff that you're getting with LeBron kind of being the way he is and wanting to be about everything, you know, it's tough. I mean, you thought when they brought in Kevin Love back, was it 2 years ago they brought him back over there?
Yep.
And I was like, okay, they got another big 3 there, you know, and they just don't work well together. I don't know what it is. And, I mean, there's so much firepower. You got Kyrie, Love, and you got LeBron, and they still, you know. And I don't know. I see that the East is just going to be no match for whatever comes out of the West again. It's as sad as it is. I do like to see the Raptors up there, though. I'm not going to lie. Being from Buffalo, I'm not a big Toronto Maple Leafs fan or anything, but I do like the Blue Jays because they're close, and I don't have a team back in Buffalo, so it's nice to see a newer face in the playoffs and in a good spot instead of the same old, you know, when it used to just be Lakers, Celtics, and then sometimes Pistons. You know, now it's a little bit different now. I mean, it's the same thing with the Warriors. I remember when I was younger, and my dad told me, he was like, "Oh, Golden State Warriors are playing," and I'd be like, who the hell, you know, the Golden State Warriors, you know, because I wasn't a big NBA guy, and now that it's like they're actually a big-time team, it's cool to see the kind of tides are changing in the NBA a little bit. So.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to skip right to the conference finals. My picks are the obvious ones right now. You can't really, at this point, I don't see anybody really going against them. It's not like college basketball this season where the top 10 teams have lost 75 times. It's really hard to pick against Cleveland and Toronto in the East, and it's impossible to pick against Golden State and San Antonio in the West. I think it's going to be a repeat of last year, Golden State and Cleveland, and I don't even think Cleveland's going to win 2 games this time. No, I don't at all.
No, I could see a sweep happening in that, and it just be over in no time. It might be actually one of those years where the NBA finishes before the NHL.
Yeah.
Because that rarely happens, and I think Golden State, well, I might take that back because, like I said, with the East, you might see a lot of 7-game series that might drag it out a little bit. But like you said, I probably see a repeat myself. I don't see San Antonio. I mean, they have the best shot. I'm probably going to be pulling for them when it comes to that point. Just kind of as an underdog type of role and a veteran type of team that we've seen forever, and one of the best dynasties probably of all time in any sport, in my opinion. I would like to see them, but I think it's going to be Golden State and the Cavs, and I'd say Golden State, like you said, will probably just walk over the Cavs, and that'll be that. And Golden State will probably continue doing that for the next couple of years because they have everyone pretty much under contract and a good setup they got going on there. So.
I absolutely agree. If you're, in case you're wondering about the number 1 team in the country right now, Kansas is up on Texas by 30 in the second half, so it doesn't look like number 1's going down tonight. We're going to come back after a quick commercial break and talk all day about the NHL trade deadline. Chris and Christian, stay tuned, folks. we've got all NHL from here on out. Trade deadline day was actually quite a dud, if you ask me. I think more trades happened after the deadline than before it today, at least. So it's really hard to pick winners and losers right now because all the trades just happened. There are still guys on planes going to their new locations. If you had to pick winners and losers of the trade deadline, give me a couple.
I'd say a really big winner again is Chicago.
Without a doubt.
You go out and you get a guy that you used to have back when your team was first starting to get good, in Andrew Ladd. And that guy is typically a close to 30-goal scorer and a grinder that will be able to play on your top line with Jonathan Taves and Teuvo Teravainen. And when Hossa comes back, that line is just going to be incredible.
Filthy, yeah.
And just going into the playoffs with a line like that, and then you got Kane underneath with Panarin. It's just that they're up and down the lineup, they're stacked. And I would say also a winner, I would say, is Florida. And a lot of people are kind of like thinking Florida has a lot of injuries right now. They just lost John Huberdeau, who's one of their top players this year, and he's half the reason Jágr's doing what he's doing, and vice versa. Both of them are working off each other very well. And they go out and they get a guy like Yuri Hudler, who, in my opinion, is a huge surprise for Calgary to get rid of someone like that because he's been playing so well with Gaudreau. I would have to say the big winners are probably Florida and Chicago. Losers, I mean, teams really didn't get worse unless they were trying to get rid of players. I mean, like I said, Calgary might be a loser in that aspect because they just lost Chris Russell as well, the defenseman that is a young defenseman who's leading the league, I think, in block shots. And he went to Dallas, I believe, correct?
Yes.
And Dallas needed to up that back end a little bit, and they might be a winner too there. There's too much going on where it's players that aren't as big as you normally see on a trade deadline type of day, but it's depth players that teams can use and to help themselves out. Like the Kings just went out, they got Scuderi a few days ago, who was there on their first Stanley Cup run. Very good stay-at-home defenseman. And then they brought in Christopher Stieg, who's been in the playoffs and has done runs with Chicago before. So there's a lot of different teams that kind of went their own pathway of what they really thought they needed. And then you saw kind of the bottom half of the league. They kind of just dumped off those players for picks to kind of stockpile, as we were talking before the show. A lot of teams, I feel, are just kind of getting rid of players for picks because the chances of getting a higher pick in this day and age now and the way the draft is set up is a lot better than it used to be. So a lot of teams that are out of the playoffs right now, like you saw Eric Stahl leave Carolina. Eric Stahl leaves Carolina, and they're 4 points out of a playoff spot. I think 5 years ago you would have never seen that because you're we're actually right there. It's something to look at now with the way the new draft is set up, but it's another team too is the Rangers. They got Eric Stahl. They won tonight on a filthy goal by Stepan that we watched before this.
Yeah, beautiful.
So, I mean, that team could give themselves another shot at giving another run. It's going to be tough to beat Washington, but we'll see. I think the trade deadline was lackluster today, but it helped a lot of teams in many different regards. So
no, I agree with you. I think Florida, it's hard to look past Hudler as far as winning the deadline. Teddy Purcell as a third liner is absolutely going to step in there, and then Jakob Kindl. A third-line defenseman, but definitely some solid depth. Mm-hmm. Now, they gave up 4 draft picks over the next 3 drafts, and they're second and thirds this year. So that'll be the only thing to watch out for, but they're definitely win-now mode. I like Hudler and Purcell both going there on a younger top half of the team, at least. Mm-hmm. Huberdeau, Barkov, and Bukestad. So I like those moves for sure. And then you said it as well with Chicago. They are absolutely stacked.
Yeah,
they are ridiculously stacked. I have a hard time picking anybody else out of the West than Chicago right now. Mm-hmm. And then, you mentioned it with Ladd. Oh my goodness, that's a great addition to that front line. Fleischmann and Weiss from Montreal cannot be overlooked.
Yep.
Depth guys. Fleischmann's a veteran. Weiss is a great fourth liner. Definitely going to upgrade that spot down there. Mm-hmm. And then Frazier and Harrison from Winnipeg. Some depth moves for sure. And you need to have that depth going to playoffs.
Yeah,
God
you
knows
lose some
what
guys. I mean, 05-06 Sabres, classic example. They lose pretty much everyone on the defensive end. They didn't have any depth, so I was like, they got no defense left. So yeah, I definitely agree.
Absolutely. And then, Carolina getting rid of Eric Stahl. I kind of like the move for the Rangers. The only thing I don't like is they don't pick until the third round in each of the next 2 drafts, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the only thing I don't really like. Anaheim Ducks making a couple underrated moves.
Yes.
Brandon Peary from Florida. Kind of surprised to see that one.
Yeah.
Because he could be in the lineup. That's a playoff team right now. They're tied for tops in their division. And then Jamie McGinn from the Sabres. We'll get to the Sabres in just a second. But if there's an underrated winner of the deadline, I like the Ducks there. You mentioned it with Dallas getting Chris Russell. Also, Colorado.
Yes.
Added Michael Bodker from Arizona. I love that move for Colorado. It gives them a true second liner behind, you've got Landeskog, McKinnon, and who else over
Duchesne's over there.
Duchesne as well, yeah.
And he could work with guys like Iginla,
Exactly,
It'll be fun to watch him be on an actual decent team now. And I think it was a good move in retrospect for the Coyotes because they do have a surplus of young guys with Max Domi, Anthony Duclair, and Ekman Larsson's going to be on the back end for a while for them. It's just like you got your young guys, and like you said with Florida, it's almost like they don't have a lot of picks in the next couple of years, but they had so many the past couple of years with getting Huberdeau and Barkov and Bjugstad and Ekblad and all these ads,
for sure.
And like just all these guys that they brought in through the draft already. It's almost like these next couple of years of drafts, they're not going to matter as much. But like you said, for the Rangers, on the other hand, did they have a really great couple of years of having to draft at the highest pick, and they haven't because they've been such a good team and they lose out on those picks. Something I didn't really think about earlier, but definitely something to keep in mind as the seasons approach in the next coming couple of years. And just some of the other players you're mentioning with McGinn going to Anaheim. I loved him on the Sabres, but I knew this was going to happen. The conditional pick is probably going to work out for the Sabres because I think all it takes is we can get a second rounder out of it.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say we, but the Sabres should get a second pick out of it if Anaheim wins 2 rounds and he plays over 50% of the games this year. So it's almost like it's a win-win for both. He's going to provide a great third-line type of guy on that team, a power play guy on the second unit, someone that can really get himself in front of the net. He showed it this year. It was nice seeing him work with Eichel a lot. So, I mean, it's going to be a loss for the Sabres in a way, but I think that those picks that they're bringing in, they're going to use before the draft starts, maybe even after, and just use next year's picks and kind of stockpile a bunch of different picks and prospects together and try and bring in some veteran forwards that can score, actually. Because, I mean, you're going to have to build around Reinhart. You're going to have to build around Eichel. If you want to keep Evander Kane here, he was starting to heat up. Ristolainen is probably going to be a top 10 defenseman next year, if not 2 years from now. He's definitely already on his way. It's going to be fun to watch this team the next couple of years. So I don't know. I don't know so much about the move because like I said, I liked McGinn. I thought he was good with us, but at the same time, it's like it's the way the NHL works, and you kind of have to go through that process in order to get yourself to be an actual really good team. And with the draft class coming up, it's almost like we're embracing the tank too. And you're almost hoping that you're going to win that percentage of getting that top pick and not Edmonton again.
Absolutely.
Dear God, not Edmonton. But
Buffalo's got on pace for a top 10 pick right now. Could become better with the subtraction of McGinn and then Weber as well. Moving on to the standings. So I mentioned earlier, Florida is tied with Tampa Bay right now at the top of the Atlantic. I think that's going to be a battle down to blood at the end of this season. Washington ridiculously running away with the Metro. You've got Chicago, Dallas, St. Louis, all within 2 points at the top of the Central. And then LA and Anaheim, who I didn't even realize were up there at the top of the Pacific. So with that being said, Washington's got 94 points. I wouldn't necessarily call them the Warriors of the NHL. Maybe so because, they have kind of Chicago, not right behind them, but within a few games like San Antonio is with Golden State. But they're in the opposite conference, so it's not quite as close. We've got 3 minutes left. Who do you have in the Stanley Cup Finals? And give me a prediction and maybe why.
All right, I have the Caps. I know they're choke artists. That's kind of why I don't want to pick them because they've always had this pretty good of a team. But they have Justin Williams now, Mr. Game 7. They have TJ Oshie. They added a whole bunch of players. Kuznetsov's playing out of his mind. So I'd have to go with the Caps in the East, and I would have to compare him to the Golden State Warriors because in the NHL nowadays, you're not going to get a team that's like Golden State. You're not going to get a team like in the NBA. It's just you can't win every game. You really can't. So I would have to go with the Caps in the East. I really don't know who would even give them a shot. Maybe the Rangers, But in the West, I gotta go with my LA Kings. As much as they're kind of slipping a little bit, and the Ducks have been riding pretty hard lately. They're coming right on their tail right now, and I think that's gonna be a sweet series if it is 4-5 right there, or if they are like kind of in a spot to face each other. I think that would be a nice series. What LA likes to do a lot is lose right before the playoffs, get themselves to be on the road first, and win one of those first 2 road games and come home. And that's what they've always done when they actually go all the way. And they're the only team that I know that can actually beat Chicago because they've done it before. So I'm going to have to probably say LA, Chicago for the Western Conference Finals, Caps, Rangers for the East.
Who wins? One word. Who wins the cup?
Los Angeles Kings.
Oh, boy. I'm a Rangers fan, so, I know they're not going to give Washington as much of a run. I think if they played, it'd be a 5 or 6 game series. Washington's just absolutely blowing everybody out of the water right now. I think it'll be Washington and probably Florida, to be honest with you. Florida or Tampa Bay out of that division, whichever one. Washington's going to blow whoever else is they're facing out of the water. And not to be that guy that just picks the 2 top teams, but it's hard to look past Chicago, especially with their additions at the deadline. We mentioned Andrew Ladd adding to that veteran presence of the team. Corey Crawford on the back end, always stout. And as much as I hate to say this because the Rangers lost to him last year, I'm going to have to give the Stanley Cup to the Washington Capitals. And on that sour note, we're going to have to head out for the night, folks. For Christian, I'm Chris. Join us next time on Sports Hour. Thanks for watching.